Happy birthday, Israel.
Happy birthday, Israel.
Happy birthday, Israel. Happy birthday, Israel. Yom Huledet Sameach LaYisrael. Happy birthday, Israel. Happy birthday, Israel. Yom Huledet Sameach. Happy birthday, Israel.
Coming home to our people, coming home to our land, coming home from all directions, scattered like the sand, coming home to a future, to the place where we began, coming home, Shalom, coming home. From the hills of Ethiopia came Beta Yisrael, a people with traditions, songs and stories yet to tell. Because we stood together, they'll no longer be alone. Coming home, Shalom, coming home. Coming home to our people, coming home to our land, coming home from all directions, scattered like the sand, coming home to a future, to the place where we began, coming home, Shalom, coming home. From a city deep in Russia, a refusenik now is free. The years of waiting over, she rejoins her family. If we stand as one together, they will never be alone. Coming home, Shalom, coming home. Coming home to our people, coming home to our land, coming home from all directions, scattered like the sand, coming home to a future, to the place where we began, coming home, Shalom, coming home, coming home, Shalom, coming home, Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I'm Rabbi Susan Abramson, coming to you from the sanctuary of Temple Shalom Emeth in Burlington, Massachusetts. And we have a wonderful service for you this evening. It's a 73rd anniversary of the birth of the State of Israel, which is very, very dear to so many of us in the Jewish community. When we think of Israel, we think both of the political state, but we also think about the ideal of the State of Israel and the idea. And it's a place where we go to really immerse ourselves in Jewish culture and Jewish life, to hear Hebrew spoken, to be amongst our people, to be in the majority for once. It's also a place which holds historical significance for us from the time of the land of our ancestors, that God gave us the land of Israel. Through the centuries, our longing to return to the State of Israel, which was the land which was our promised land, many of us believe. It's also the place where we come to seek refuge from those who would oppress us. We have very firmly in our minds the images of people jumping off the boats from Europe after they lived through the Holocaust, and a place where we could reestablish ourselves and feel a certain sense of safety from persecution. So, of course, there are so many challenges which continue to this day, but there are so much that we can be proud of about the State of Israel today. Most recently, its response to the COVID virus and how more people were vaccinated there than almost any other country in the world, how quickly the country was able to gain safety for its citizens. We think about the tremendous amount of startups and high tech and the ways in which Israelis are contributing to the entire world and the future of humanity. So all of this, we have so much to be grateful for. And in particular, we think of Hadassah Hospital and the medical innovations and how it provides such wonderful health care, not only for Jews, but for Arabs and Christians and everybody who lives in Israel and the territories. So we are very, very grateful that we have this opportunity, not only as a congregation to celebrate Israel's birth, but also join together with the members of Hadassah. So Shabbat Shalom. We now continue our service with our Cantorial Soloist Ben Silver, leading us in Lachado D to welcome the Shabbat bride.
Lecha dodi lekrat kala Penei Shabbat nikabela Lecha dodi lekrat kala Penei Shabbat nikabela Shamor v'zachor v'dibur Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, v'shemu tiferet v'lit hilah. Lecha dodi, lekrat kala, v'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi, lekrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, kiva ore, umi ori, uri, shir da beheri, kibod Adonai alayi nigla. Lecha dodi, lekrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi, lekrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Hoi v'shalom, ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha, u'tzahola, toch emunei, am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi, lekrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi, lekrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Penei Shabbat nikabela.
Now I'd like to introduce Mindy Standley, an active member of Hadassah, as well as a past president of our congregation, to light the candles for us this evening.
As we gather to celebrate Shabbat and the anniversary of the State of Israel, let us stop for a moment to listen to our hearts and our connections with our Jewish state. Imagine listening to Hebrew being spoken on the streets, listening to the voices of prayer rising from the Western Wall, listening to the prayers for peace coming from all corners of the state. And as we listen, let us rejoice in the peace and light of Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, b'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Praised are you, O God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to light Shabbat candles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
On this special Shabbat, we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Independence Day of Israel, celebrated annually on the 5th day of the Hebrew month of Iyar. It was on that date in the Hebrew year 5708, corresponding to May 14, 1948, that the State of Israel was proclaimed. From the moment Israel was declared a state, it faced many challenges. With huge waves of immigrants after the war in Europe, Israel had to develop an economy and fertilize a barren land against a backdrop of constant aggression from its neighbors. Each decade brought with it hard-won successes.
We can't speak about the history of the State of Israel without telling the story of Hadassah. When Hadassah was founded in 1912, there was no State of Israel. Zionism was capturing the imagination of Jewish leaders worldwide. In Baltimore, an accomplished woman named Henrietta Zold encouraged a small group of Jewish women to work toward bringing much-needed medical care to Palestine. She named her organization Hadassah. It became one of the largest Jewish organizations in the world. On this special Shabbat, we remember this visionary woman who has inspired others to support and maintain the land and the people of Israel with practical Zionism, a caring and compassion that has become synonymous with Hadassah.
This organization that began in pre-state Israel as a tiny public health clinic with 2 nurses has flourished over a century into 2 world-class medical and research centers in Jerusalem, bringing advanced medical care to all, regardless of race, ethnicity, or nationality, earned Hadassah a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2005. Hadassah established Israel's first teaching hospital, its first nursing, medical, and dental schools, and established its first cancer center, burn, trauma, and neonatal units, bone marrow transplantation center, and the first stem cell research center in the country. The Hadassah Medical Organization houses Israel's national skin bank and the only bone marrow registry for Arabs in the world. Known for its promising work in regenerative medicine for diseases like MS, ALS, and Alzheimer's, Hadassah's pioneering medical research impacts all of humanity. And today, with its extensive experience and agility in quickly translating basic research into clinical studies, Hadassah Medical Organization is in a unique position to be a world leader in developing therapies against COVID-19.
Hadassah has played an essential role in changing the face of Israel and setting standards of excellence in providing health care, education, youth programs, and jobs. We have transformed the land, cared for the environment, and remained devoted to improving the quality of life for all the people of Israel. Hadassah's priorities have always been health, Israel, and advocacy. Our members are empowered to advocate for human rights and women's rights, making a difference in the lives of families everywhere. Our history is the history of Israel, and we are partners in its past, its present, and its future.
Now please turn in your prayer books to page 146 and rise for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaruo ma'arviv aravim, b'chachma poteach sha'arim, uvit vuna mashaneh hitim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakokavim. B'mishratecha barachea kirtzono, boreyom v'layla golea or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom umevi laila, umavdil bein yom uva bein laila, Adonai tzvaot shmo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim.
152. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Now please be seated and turn to page 154 for the V'ahavta. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'kol levavcha uv'kol nafshecha uv'kol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shachpecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam le'od al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiyot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohim Emeth.
And now we continue with the singing of Mi Chamocha, the song the Israelites sang at the shore of the sea when they crossed the Red Sea to freedom from Pharaoh's grip.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh. Nora tehilot, osef tele, Nora tehilot, osef tele, Adonai Leolam va'ed, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam. Ze Eli anu v'yamru, Ze Eli anu v'yamru. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed.
Page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai hapores sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
Yishivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom, L'shalom. V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Ufros aleinu Sukat Shomecha, Ufros aleinu Sukat Shomecha. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Amen.
We now continue with the singing of Vishamru on page 162. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Beni uvein B'nei Yisrael, ori le'olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. And now please turn the page to 164 and please rise if you are able and willing for the tefillah. Anananananana Adonai, Ananananana Svatai Tivta, Ananananana Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, Ananananana Adonai, Ananananana Svatai Tivta, Ananananana Ufi Agid Tehilatecha. Anananananana Adonai. Anananananana Sfatai Tifta. Ananananana Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Anananananana Adonai. Ananananana Sfatai Tifta. Ananananana Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana Sfatai Tifta. Ananananana Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Page 166. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'kanei hakol, v'zocher chasdei avot v'imahot, u'mevii geula livnei v'nehem, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. Page 168. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נהופים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. Page 170. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. Page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel that marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
Now we continue with the singing of Shalom Rav, a song for peace, on page 178.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarich et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם, תשים לעולם.
Grant abundant peace to Israel, your people, forever. For you are the sovereign God of all peace. May it be pleasing to you to bless your people, Israel, in every season and moment with your peace. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai hamarach et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Shabbat shalom.
May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all those who are ill. This evening, we think in particular of anyone we want to keep in our hearts and our minds who we know personally who are suffering from the coronavirus, those who are suffering from other illnesses, those who are suffering around the world from this disease, those who are suffering in our neighborhoods, our state, and our country. We keep all of them in our prayers, and we think also of those in the state of Israel who are suffering from this illness as well as all the loved ones of our people and our neighbors. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for all of their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them and all of us a complete renewal of body and spirit and spiritual health. And let us say, Amen.
Yishaberach Avoteinu, Yishaberach Imoteinu. Hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
So in addition to thinking about those who are in need of healing and those who need our help, we also think about how grateful we are and how many blessings we have at this moment. So first of all, we're all grateful for the birth of the State of Israel and that we were able to reach this occasion of its 73rd anniversary. We think about all of those who have become fully vaccinated, those who are in the process of being fully vaccinated, and those who have appointments to be vaccinated. More and more of our population is grateful and feels blessed to have that feeling of comfort and support of the important vaccine. We also think about those who are celebrating their bar or bat mitzvah in our congregation, who have already, or those who are about to in the coming month. We think about all of those flowers which are blooming outside and the trees when you can see the buds bursting on all of the trees outside. We're grateful for the warm weather, the sunshine. So whatever you may be grateful for at this moment, your own personal reasons, and for us as a community, we join together in the singing of the Shehechianu prayer.
Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
We pause for a moment of silent prayer.
Please turn back in your prayer books to page 180 and join me in the singing of Oseh Shalom at the bottom of the page. Oseh Shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Phyllis Berlow. Phyllis is a past president of our congregation. She's known to us fondly as our temple matriarch. and she is the chair of the Michael H. Berlow Award Committee, and she's now going to speak to us about the Berlow Award and introduce today's speaker. Take it away, Phyllis.
Yom HaAtzmaut is a perfect opportunity to bring together Temple Shalom Emeth and Hadassah. Usually, this service also celebrates the recipients of the Michael H. Berlow Jewish Education Award for teens traveling to Israel for the first time on a tour like Birthright. But this is still an unusual time. Unfortunately, due to the current continuing health crisis, traveling to many places is still limited, which means that there will be no award recipients again this year. The award was established 22 years ago in memory of Michael, co-founder and first president of Temple Shalom Emeth, and an ardent supporter of Hadassah. Michael visited Israel for the first time with Hadassah in 1987. He was impressed and excited by the land, its people, its history, and the feeling you get just by being there, a feeling you can't understand until you're there. And he hoped that everyone would have the opportunity to go to Israel at least once. To date, a small scholarship has been presented to 19 students who have completed the Temple's religious school program through confirmation. In 2019, the award recipient was Kerra Lipman, daughter of Daryl and Shelley Lipman of Billerica. Kerra is a sophomore at Merrimack College studying elementary education and was recently on the Dean's List. She also currently teaches a class at Temple Shalom Emeth. Kerra went to Israel via Birthright, and when she said, Eshachiyanu, at the Western Wall, she felt her grandmother's presence with her. We're happy that she has agreed to share her Israel experience with us. We look forward to the future and the stories of many more students as they experience the joy of seeing Israel for the first time. Shabbat Shalom.
Hi, so a couple years back, summer of 2019, I received the Berlow Award and I went on my Birthright trip to Israel. I had been to Israel one time before just to visit family, but this Birthright trip was a whole different experience for me. I went with one of my closest friends, Sammy Murgo, who's also a member of this temple, and we really bonded and made a lot of new friends and created a lot of new memories that we get to keep for the rest of our lives. So a couple things we did. One thing that really stood out to me was when we went to the Western Wall in Jerusalem. They gave us the activity they had us do. They gave us these little pieces of paper that we can write notes on or write our thoughts or pretty much anything. And we would roll them up and put them in the cracks of the bricks in the Western Wall. So they would be there forever. And there's a million different people doing that. There's so many notes poking out of the wall. So for me personally, I wrote a little note to my grandmother. She had been to Israel a couple times. She passed away a few years back. And Israel was one of her favorite places, and I always heard her talk about it. So when I was standing at the Western Wall, I really felt as if she was kind of there with me because I was standing in the same place that she had been standing in, feeling the same feelings that she was. So that was a really moving experience for me. And another thing that was just an interesting cultural thing that I noticed, they told us to, when we were leaving the wall, to walk backwards. You don't turn your back to the wall, you just walk backwards. So looking around, seeing everyone walking backwards with me was just a really cool experience as well. Some other things we did, we went to the Dead Sea. We floated in the Dead Sea, and they gave us we went to the shop where they make all of the things with the minerals from the Dead Sea because the minerals from there are very rich. So we were each given a package of a mud mask, and so it was a really fun bonding experience with the whole group to cover our faces and our hands with mud and then go in the Dead Sea and wash it all off. And the minerals made our skin really smooth, and it was just a really fun experience floating there because the salt, you can't sink, so that was really fun. And just another thing we did, we climbed Mount Masada for sunrise, which was really cool. We got to hear the whole story about everything that happened there. And we got up at 2 a.m, got ready for the hike, and it was just a really beautiful view from the top, seeing the sunrise. We could literally see it come up on the horizon. So it was just really beautiful, really fun moment with me and my new friends that I made there. So yeah, it was just a really great experience overall, and I'm so grateful that I had it, and they gave me a lot of ideas for things that I could do in Israel in the future. They told me about a Masa trip, so that's when you go and teach English to kids who speak Hebrew. So I really think that I'm interested in going back to Israel one day, and that idea is inspired from going on the Birthright Trip and the amazing memories that I made there. I just wanted to thank the Berlow Committee for giving me the scholarship. I really appreciate it, and it means a lot to me. Thank you.
This is a song written by Naomi Shemer called Jerusalem of Gold, or in Hebrew, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, that expresses the 2,000-year longing of the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem. And she wrote most of the song back in probably the early 60s, and then after 1967 and the Six-Day War, after Jerusalem was reunified, she wrote another verse to it, a more optimistic verse. The song has 4 verses, but I like to sing just 2 of them, the first one and then that last verse. So this is Jerusalem of Gold. As clear as wine, the wind is flying among the dreamy pines, as evening light is slowly dying and a lonely bell still chimes. So many songs, so many stories, the stony hills recall. Around her heart my city carries a lonely ancient wall. Yerushalayim shel zahav, v'shel nechoshet, v'shel or, alo lechol shirayich, ani kinor. Yerushalayim shel zahav, v'shel nechoshet, v'shel or, alo lechol shirayich, ani kinor. Back to the wells and to the fountains within the ancient walls, the sound of horn from Temple's mountain again so loudly calls. From rocky caves this very morning 1,000 suns will glow, and we shall go down to the Jordan by way of Jericho. Yerushalayim shel zahav, v'shel nechoshet, v'shel or, halo lechol shirayich, ani kinor. Yerushalayim shel zahav, v'shel nechoshet, v'shel or, halo lechol shirayich, ani
We now continue our service with the Aleinu on page 586. Please rise if you are able.
Aleinu lishabeach la'adon hakol, latet gedula liyotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kigoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kichol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Shehu notesh shamayim v'yoser haaretz, umosha yikaro bashamayim mima'al, ushchinatu zo, ushchinatu zo, begavhei meromim, hu Eloheinu ein od, Emet Malkeinu Efes Zulato, Kakahato Betorahato, Viadata Hayom Vahashivota Elivahavecha, Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim, Bashamayim Mima'al, Va'aretz Mitachat Einod. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, hayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shemo echad. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, hayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Bayom hahu yihye Adonai, Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shemo echad. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Echad u'shemo echad, Echad u'shemo echad.
We continue the introduction to the Kaddish prayer on page 597 in your prayer books. Remember our people who suffered and died so that our people could be free and secure in their land. May their memory be more than just a distant shadow. For their dreams left unfulfilled and lives taken too soon, we remember. We remember our brothers and sisters whose sacrifice kept the dream of democracy in our homeland and justice alive. May their courage be our inspiration and strength. For life cut short and vision unrealized, we remember. We remember the fallen of Israeli armed forces, all victims of terror and tragedy. May the darkness of their loss not obscure the light of peace. They were in love with their land and in love with life. For the agony, the tears, the mothers and the fathers, for the children who were and for the children yet to be, we remember. Page 599. We now think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We think of Paul Kramer, brother of Joan Sullivan, who died during this past month. We add to his name the names of those whose yahrzeits or anniversary of whose deaths occur this week. Royal Schweiger, Sylvia Kornetsky, Miriam Berman, Dr. George Baden, Sidney Barkin, Ruth Myers. And at this time you may keep in your heart and your mind those who you knew personally who have died during this past month or whose anniversaries of their deaths occur at this moment. And we also keep in our hearts and our prayers those whose names we do not know, who have been victims of this cruel disease, those around the world who have perished from this illness. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. May all those who died defending the state of Israel have a special place in our heart and our mind at this moment, as we continue with a mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei rabbah, v'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudasha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, D'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam araba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to our country, to all Israel and all the world, to which we say, Amen. You may be seated. We now continue with the Kiddush, the prayer over the wine, and the Motzi, the prayer over the challah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kadsho v'ahava uvratzon hinkelanu zikaron lemahaseh bereshit ki hu yom tehila lamikrei kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki banu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta michol hamim v'shabbat kadshecha v'ahava uvratzon hinkaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
I was a witness to Israel's independence by Golda Meir. On Friday, May 14, 1948, the 5th of Iyar, 5708, the Jewish state would come into being. Its population numbering 650,000, its chance of surviving its birth depending on whether or not the Yishuv could meet the assault of 5 Arab enemies actively aided by Palestine's 1 million Arabs. The phone rang in my room. A car was waiting to take me to the museum for the proclamation ceremony. It had been decided to hold the ceremony at the Tel Aviv Museum, not because it was such an imposing building, which it wasn't, but because it was small enough to be easily guarded. A large crowd was already waiting outside the museum by the time I arrived. At exactly 4 p.m. the ceremony began. Ben-Gurion, wearing a dark suit and tie, stood up and rapped a gavel. According to the plan, this was to be the signal for the orchestra tucked away in a second-floor gallery to play Hatikva. But something went wrong, and there was no music. Spontaneously, we rose to our feet and sang the national anthem. Then Ben-Gurion cleared his throat and said quietly, "I shall now read the scroll of independence." It took him only a quarter of an hour to read the entire proclamation. He read it slowly and very clearly, and I remember his voice changing and rising a little as he came to this paragraph. Accordingly, we, the members of the National Council representing the Jewish people in the land of Israel and the Zionist movement, have assembled on the day of the termination of the British mandate for Palestine and by virtue of our natural and historic right and of the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations, do hereby proclaim the establishment of a Jewish state in the land of Israel, the State of Israel. The State of Israel, my eyes filled with tears, and my hands shook. We had done it. We had brought the Jewish state into existence, and I, Golda Meir's son, had lived to see the day. Whatever happened now, whatever price any of us would have to pay for it, we had recreated the Jewish national home. The long exile was over. Now we were a nation like no other nation, master for the first time in 20 centuries of our own destiny. The dream had come true, too late to save those who had perished in the Holocaust, but not too late for the generations to come.
So thank you, Kerra, for your wonderful description of your Birthright Trip and how the Berlow Scholarship helped to enable you to have that wonderful experience. Thank you to the members of Hadassah and most of the joint Hadassah Temple members who conducted the service this evening. Thank you to Phyllis Berlow for overseeing all of it. And thank you to all of you for joining us. And now we're going to continue with Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, which means the hope. Please rise in body or in spirit. Shabbat Shalom.
You'll find the words, if you need them, on page 678 in your prayer books. Hatikva. Kol od balevav penima, nefesh Yehudi homiya, ulfate mizrach kadima, ayin litzion Sophia, od lo avda tikvatenu, hatikva shnot apayim, liot am chofshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Liot am chofshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim.
Happy birthday, Israel.
Happy birthday, Israel.
Happy birthday, Israel. Happy birthday, Israel. Yom Haledet Sameach, Israel. Happy birthday, Israel. Happy birthday, Israel. Happy birthday, Israel. Yom Haledet Sameach. Happy birthday, Israel.